Guruve Gaurachandaya Radhikaya Tadale Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tad Bhaktaya Namo Namaha Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubheva Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. My Dandavat Pranam devotees. So I'm doing a short video, and this is not one of the famous last words short videos. I'm truly going to have to make it short. But I wanted to answer some questions from some devotees who wrote in to me personally regarding the post that I had made recently about what is Iskcon, what does it mean to be in Iskcon, and of course the post was really more reflective of just the overall idea, really what does it mean to be in Iskcon, and looking at a broader picture of that meaning, and also wanting to perhaps look at the necessity for dialogue around that issue. And I put in the post itself that I did not want any negative criticism of either Srila Prabhupada's mission or devotees in the mission, because I don't think that it is healthy for dialogue, and I think it entrenches the idea of camp spirit, that I'm in this camp and you're in this camp. And it also is very impersonal in many ways. It's personal and impersonal. I don't want to, because some devotees wrote me and I do have to give some expression, because some comments I did delete because it went down the avenue of more catharsis probably than actual dialogue or reflection or hope, so to speak. But it really was more catharsis about their personal experiences. And I don't want to deny that. That's another reason I'm doing this video. But still, I think that the foundation for any future progress in understanding the unity of the family of Mahaprabhu will come from a more sober perspective. And sometimes it's difficult to be sober when emotions are high and so forth and so on. So that's why even in the post, I took time to write out my history, so forth, so on, and being more reflective about my place in Srila Prabhupada's mission. I never ever considered that I was not. Of course, I wasn't, as I also mentioned in the post, I was never confronted with the idea that I wasn't, right? Since 1993, and then the other day it came up, as I mentioned. And again, the devotee was very sweet and everything. So, you know, we don't always have to look at everything from an immediately negative angle. Right? We can be more reflective and more broad in vision and try to see all the different implications. And I think that becomes a basis under which some progress can be made in moving forward to perhaps a more unified family of Mahaprabhu. So, but for those devotees who did write into me, both for those whose post I had to delete, and again, I want to address that first, because I don't want you to think that I'm insensitive to the experiences that you might have gone through, or that I'm insensitive to how you were impacted. Both male and female devotees wrote in, and actually one sannyasi also wrote in, right? There's some sannyasis who posted on the actual post, and you know, I very much appreciate that, because it's a very mature and sober sannyasi devotee that I knew from my association here in Alachua. But one also sannyasi wrote in, and you know, just was very much not angry, but sort of almost declaring a idea of, you know, that it is what it is. We're in a stage of division and so forth and so on. And I just think that that's not really the spirit per se of Sriman Mahaprabhu. I believe the spirit of Sriman Mahaprabhu that descends all the way down to Srila Prabhupada, who's pretty much the fulfillment of the prophecy of Mahaprabhu, that the spirit is one of unity of the family of Mahaprabhu. So there may be many things we could look back on and see some particular fault here or there. But really, when you look back in the entire history of Mahaprabhu's movement, you can find things even in Mahaprabhu's Leela with the sons of Advaita Acharya. You could find in the situation of the Gaudiya Math after the Samadhi of Srila Bhaktisnand Saraswati Thakur. So there's always going to be various kinds of things like this that arise. So really, if someone gets sick, we try to heal. If a train goes off the track, right, you try to right the train, right? So it's not so much that our feelings should be ignored, and I apologize profusely if I seem to have been not willing to accommodate genuinely what people went through and their need to cathartic about that or their need to heal from that, maybe by speaking on the difficulty they had. I know one devotee wrote me and mentioned that my own personal preaching has not been impacted so much by that, but that they felt that they no longer had a home, that they felt disenfranchised, and so forth and so on. So I completely understand that, and I also completely empathize with that fact, and that's why I think it is necessary to start doing the work of bridging all of those things rather than creating a continuum, because it's very easy. See, in the spirit of argument or disagreement, it's always easier to entrench the current ideal. I'm in this camp, you're in this camp, and so forth and so on. And that has progressed to a point now where even individuality is lost. So Vaishnavas are not seen anymore according to their Vaishnavata or their devotion, but they're seen according to their affiliation. And pretty much that becomes tantamount. I put it in my post. Actually, it's the same as saying that, well, if you're black or if you're white or if you're female or this or that, right, you have a certain kind of stigma. And we don't accommodate that particular status, right? Because if you associate something on the basis of the body, your body is associated with this group, and therefore your contribution to bhakti won't be based on your devotion or your insights or your savor or anything else. It'll be based on where your body is situated in the institutional arrangements of the world, right? So that's not really vastly different from saying if you're black, if you're white, if you're female, right, etc., etc. So obviously that's not a tenable position to move forward in uniting the family of Mahaprabhu, or even tenable in creating an atmosphere of pure devotion. Because if we operate on that basis, then aparad is almost certain to be part of that. Because aparad is 6 things. Hanti nandanti vaideshti, Vaishnavam nabhinandati, krujyate nahashram dashane. That if you harm a Vaishnava, if you blaspheme a Vaishnava, if you maintain envy towards a Vaishnava, if you fail to welcome a Vaishnava, if you become angry towards a Vaishnava, and if you don't become happy upon seeing a Vaishnava, all of these things are aparad and pantanani sakt. It can cause fall down. So we want to be very careful, because even where sense gratification can be overcome and in maturity we can advance in bhakti, if there is Vaishnava aparad, it is very difficult to move forward from that position. So I think we're doing a great service to the overall Vaishnava community by instilling the guardrails against that, by trying to have dialogue and become more personalized in our dealings with Vaishnavas, and begin to assist in creating an atmosphere that does foster actual Vaishnavism and not sectarianism. So I thought that if I allowed a lot of those comments, which I completely understand to be reactions to experiences you've had, if I allowed that to be posted, then what would have happened is it would have given rise to the opposite ideal. Oh, see, they're criticizing. Oh, see, they don't like Prabhupada's movement. Oh, see, this or that, right? On the other hand, I think from the opposite polarity, that I think, perhaps the leadership in Iskcon also has to look and see the impact of many devotees who became disenfranchised simply on the basis of their exploration for advancement in bhakti. You understand? It wasn't that people had attraction to a particular sadhu, or they felt inspiration from the Harikatha of a particular sadhu. They axiomatically were uninterested or disenfranchised from Srila Prabhupada. Right? We obviously cannot say like that because it's just not correct. Right? So now, especially in more contemporary times, we see many persons, just like not only in contemporary times, but I had direct experience of many of the leaders of our Srila Prabhupada's mission come to have darshan in association with my Guru Pada Padma. Right? And I think that they felt some enthusiasm, enlightenment, encouragement in that environment, and I don't think it became a problem until there was some inner society friction around that, right? But that would have been something that really should have been worked out in the inner body of that particular element of leadership. I think by impacting the broader society, it actually created an environment where many devotees became disenfranchised. Give me a second because I'm multitasking here. Okay, forgive me. So I think that it created an environment where many devotees became disenfranchised because, many devotees, myself, others, may have had, like the ability to maintain our preaching, to go on. And as I mentioned, I just have not been in environments where that has really been an issue. I've always, been able to travel, preach, do various things in all the various sanghas without any problem. So, but for some devotees, that really became a problem. So now there's, of course, two sides of every story. There were, in fact, many devotees who had some bad experiences within the society or had a certain view of the society due to certain bad activities that went on. And when they did approach another sadhu, they did so and took a revengeful mood towards our Srila Prabhupada's mission. And, in some ways that was really more of an emotional outburst than I think a permanent idea of what they felt about the mission of Srila Prabhupada. Because I think many devotees all want to see the mission of Mahaprabhu as a whole grow. And certainly a huge part of that is the mission of our Srila Prabhupada. So I don't think that even those devotees in the core of their hearts felt, an anger towards or a desire to see the failing of Srila Prabhupada's movement, right? But they may have had critique about certain elements of it or certain things about it, and in doing so, they gave expressions that created a dynamic that was unhealthy for, sort of familial relations, so to speak. Almost like two cousins or two brothers getting into an argument, and even though they're family, it becomes difficult to have association. But when you, on the other hand, blanket that situation to the entire body of devotees as a whole, then it becomes more like what I've mentioned earlier. It becomes like more body-conscious consideration than devotional consideration. Understand? So, even though those devotees might have undergone some pain, and they might have undergone some element of distrust around the society based on certain things, I think it would still be possible if there was more open dialogue. And I think you find that a little bit more now, because you see even among the leadership now, you see a great deal of diversity, right? I don't ever think the society was a homogeneous body in terms of thought. I think there was always devotees who had different levels of realization, different levels of experience, different levels of understanding of a particular teaching of Srila Prabhupada. So it was never that there was one homogeneous chain of thought. And I think maybe one of the things that might have been problematic is to try to force that to exist. that there's only going to be one line of thought, only one kind of understanding, right? Because we're all individuals. And people may have genuinely, in their unfoldment in bhakti, have gleaned certain understandings. Now, it's become more apparent now that that's a fact. I mean, I've seen directly that those who are performing the function of giving Harinam and Diksha have different opinions on Siddhanta, different opinions on association, so forth and so on. It's just that it's not a pronounced thing right now, so it has not garnered the kind of attention, perhaps, association in the earlier periods post Srila Prabhupada's Samadhi, with Srila Bhakti Rakshak Goswami Maharaj, or with my Gurudev, Srila Bhakti Narayan Goswami Maharaj, or others, right? So I don't think it's viewed in the same way, maybe because there's more maturity, maybe because there's time. Like one nice Mataji wrote me that she felt, all these things just in time, they're changing. And I've experienced that. I've experienced, especially among many of the young, very inspired devotees. I've been to many communities, and I've seen very inspired young devotees bring together amazing collections of souls in the service of Srila Prabhupada and Mahaprabhu's mission. And they're just completely non-sectarian, completely inspired by the variety of Harikatha they hear, and completely dedicated to their own individual Gurudevs and the service of their Gurudevs. And I thought this is the future. This is the ideal model that we want to see. And they base things on the Vaishnavata of the person whom they're dealing with. If obviously somebody comes and they're completely of a different Siddhantic view of Gaudiya line, or they're different, they're Mayavadi or something else, or somebody who is just has a very negative or not harmonizing spirit, then they've also said, well, this is probably not somebody who would be beneficial to our community. So I think we're seeing that growth. And I'm always, both not amazed really anymore, because for me it's been kind of a norm for the amount of years that after I retired, I started to travel and preach. I never ran across really difficulties. I think that is the future. And I think to encourage and help that future to become expedited, I think that those devotees who have been kind of disenfranchised, maybe finding some way to, in collective, start to take now there's some people who it's not going to happen. Maybe the scarring is too much, or maybe perhaps their own negativity is a factor as well. So in their own negativity, they just cannot digest that anything or anyone related to the Iskcon society has any value or is valuable. You understand? So that mentality also is not helpful, and it also will not produce in their own lives, what to speak of in the broader Vaishnav Mandal, any kind of sense of growth. You understand? On the other hand, those who may have been pained or hurt or disenfranchised, perhaps in trying to find reconciliation, right? And I think now there is a more accommodating space. And on the other hand, so let me first do this, because on the other polarity, if there are those who simply feel that no one else is allowed except those who we've gleaned to be truly in Prabhupada's mood and Prabhupada's spirit, not accommodating that even within the society, there's a huge diversity of people. There are people who think or feel, and I'm not saying think, but they feel genuinely that the tradition of dhoti, kurta, kantimala, etc. are a standard that should never be broken. There are others who go as far as to think that no, a complete disengagement from that cultural norm to a whole idea of Western dress, Western presentation is the right way to go, right? So you have diversity, even within the society, a huge swath of diverse opinion and participation. So don't close the doors on those, especially, there's many Prabhupada disciples, direct disciples of Srila Prabhupada, who are in that category of those who felt disenfranchised. Because having observed certain growing pains or issues within the society, right, if they spoke on it or called it out, they were kind of disenfranchised. If they sought inspiration of another sadhu. They were disenfranchised. So I think on both sides of that fence, right, there should be a sense of reflection, right? A sense of reflection and a sense of accommodation. I saw personally in the experiences with my Guru Padma, any genuine sadhu coming in the line of Mahaprabhu who came in his presence, he would ask them to speak Harikatha, do bhajan seva, right? Speak something about the glories of Krishna or Mahaprabhu. Always. I saw this all the time. If any Vaishnav came and they spoke and there was any siddhantic correction to be made, he would humbly and in a very loving spirit make that correction, right? In the general audience, right? So there is no way or fault that could be found in having a broader range of association with Vaishnavas. For one, it will certainly avoid the aparads that I mentioned earlier. And secondly, it will empower the spirit of unity in the family of Mahaprabhu. And more than that, even much more than that, because these are not just Iskcon outside dynamics. These are inner Gaudiya dynamics. Right? You have different sanghas of Gaudiya. Well, we don't get along with this sangha, we don't get along with that sangha, etc., etc. So I'm certainly not going to heal the world in a 15-minute video here. But I'm just speaking my mind, and I found it very reflective in the hearts of many people. And I think another problem has been that we have been a sort of hierarchy of control, so to speak. In other words, that it's always like beyond the reach of the mass amount of devotees, what kind of decisions are made, what kind of conclusions are come to about a particular thing, right? We never get like a referendum going on what do all the devotees who are participating, donating, serving in this movement, what do they think about this particular stand? But rather it's passed down to them. And I think in many ways that also gradually should be more accommodating in terms of what is the overall grassroots feeling that devotees have, because they are the basis of the society. Understand? If we don't get then what happens is many of those devotees become closed because they think, well, I'm just going to abide by a certain opinion, and I don't really feel that way. But so their bhakti will also be impacted by that because their hearts are not fully open. Their hearts are not fully being what they are in approaching the process of bhakti. But they're closed it down to try to fit under the parameters of where they're serving. And so that's not at all a healthy experience either. You understand? And there should be no fear that more neophyte devotees or devotees with less maturity will somehow or another be affected. Because there's always, in any social Vaishnava environment, any Sangha, there are senior Vaishnavas present as well. Therefore, that's why my Guru Padma always allowed any Gaudiya Vaishnava who came, any actual person in the line of Mahaprabhu, it doesn't matter if Iskcon, Gaudiya Math, this Sangha, that Sangha, he always speaks some Harikatha. You understand? In this way, many jewels in the Vaishnava community are discovered because we're able to then hear from those Vaishnavas and get great inspiration for seva. And that is beneficial to Srila Prabhupada's mission and beneficial to the society of Mahaprabhu's mission at large. So I'm speaking these things and I want to address a couple of topics. I don't want to prolong it. But one is I wanted to especially speak to those devotees whose post I thought would not be helpful to creating dialogue like this. But I do empathize with what you've gone through, and I do empathize with the catharsis that you have to express when we're looking at this particular issue. And on the other hand, like I mentioned, the phone call that I got and spoke to the devotee, I think that devotee was a very sweet devotee, and I don't believe there was any duplicitousness or anything. I think, again, as I mentioned just now, that under the protocols of what's been handed down, their own hearts have to contract because they're not giving full expression to how they may feel about you individually, but it's a blanket policy. Which pretty much, again, I put in my post that it's just like hearing somebody speak on the phone and having very good feelings, and then when you see them say, oh, I didn't know you were black, or I didn't know you were white, I didn't know you were feminine, a female, or etc., etc. And so we don't want to have that, because it's putting devotees, also younger devotees, rather than a more broad-minded position, and even in a sense to more deeply understand the philosophy. Because even if they hear something which is wrong, to have it corrected now gives them both perspectives. This is not such correct Siddhanta, this is correct Siddhanta. You understand? So we don't teach simply by always affirming what we consider only the right perspective. But sometimes we have to see why this perspective is wrong. You understand? This is a more holistic sense of teaching. Other than that, the person has a view, but they don't know why it's that view. You understand? So anyways, that's what this is meant for. And again, let me just lastly, because other devotees have had a chance to write or speak. So for those devotees who I would encourage you, you can write again, certainly. And just in a more reflective mood, and in a mood that's progressive towards resolving things, right? Because certainly people want to hear your experience. You understand? And I put my experience there. I actually went through my experience. But in my conclusive mood, was that, yes, this should allow the society to grow. It should allow Prabhupada's mission, Mahaprabhu's mission to grow, right? Not to become more segmented. And if we had posted some of the things that were there, then that would have been entrenching to the already existing polarities that we're trying to not have. All right, well, my Dandavat Pranam, and thank the devotees who are all listening now. And I pray always for your blessing and your mercy to continue in the service of Hari, Guru, and Vaishnava. Jai Haribo, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Gurudev ki jai, Guru Parampara ki jai, especially Sri Sachinandan Gaur Hari ki jai. As Sri Gaur Purnim is coming up, so we want to have absorption in that way. All right, my Dandavat Pranam. Radhe Radhe.